Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm reviewing a smart lock from a company called DESLOC. And I am really glad I'm doing this because it's the first time I am reviewing a smart lock. And for the last few years, we did get a few requests, but I wasn't able to because my wife and I, we were renting since we moved in 2021 and I've never been able to. So now that we own this apartment, I'm able to change locks and I can test this out. So I'm really excited. And I've had it on, I've installed it. I'll talk a bit about the installation process, especially considering that I'm not a very handy guy. I'm going to give you a lot of reasons why I actually love this smart lock, and all for less than $100 US. Now, as you probably saw from the runtime of this video, it is a pretty long video, so I do apologize in advance, but it is a smart lock. This is something that's going to protect your house and your family. So I feel like this is something that you really need a lot of information about. And I want to be as neutral and thorough as possible. So, and I've had this for a few weeks now. And like I said, I absolutely love it. And I'm going to give you a lot of reasons why I really liked this lock. So first, let's talk about the unboxing. So it is pretty straightforward. You do get the smart lock. There is a front and back panel of it. The front panel is where the keypad is, the screen and all that. The back panel is where you put the batteries in for the lock. And again, we'll talk about the installation later on. You do get all the screws and everything that you need to install it. You also get a deadbolt that I would encourage you to use the same deadbolt that comes with it. Now you do get a guide, a whole bunch of documentation, and of course a guide on how to install it. So unless you are extremely confident on installing or replacing your locks, I would highly recommend you read everything. In fact, go watch other YouTube videos on experts on how to replace the locks on your doors. That's what I did. I mean, I read the document from start to finish, but I'm more of a visual person. So I watched several YouTube videos before I was confident enough to try it. Now, one thing that is included in the box and I absolutely love is sort of a template and a guide. So it's sort of this like cardboard material. You get all measurements there that you can use to measure. So this is more if, let's say, for example, you need to check whether the hole on your door is at the right place, or if it's a brand new door and you need to drill the hole and you need to know where to place it, just put it on the door. And then from there, you immediately know whether the door fits the requirements and where to drill the hole. I thought that was brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about the installation process. Like I said, overall, it was actually really simple, but I did have a small little hiccup. So installing the deadbolt, the one that came with the DESLOC 1100 Plus, is sort of a newer design. So it has sort of a plate, like a faceplate around it. Whereas the one that was currently installed had more of what they call a collar ring around the deadbolt. So it didn't have that sort of a recess on the edge of the wood where the faceplate could go into and still be flushed with the edge of the door. If I had just swapped it and put it there, it would stick out, my door wouldn't be able to close. So I was at a bit of a loss and I was thinking like, oh, how on earth am I going to fix this? So I tried to remove the collar, the ring collar from my old lock, and I could do that, but I couldn't find a way to remove the faceplate on the new one. So then after looking and researching and honestly checking ChatGPT as well, the best option was for me to actually make that recess on the door myself. Now I could have easily hired someone to do it, but it would have cost a lot of money. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and do this myself. Now, a lot of the videos online actually showed you how to create that recess on the door, but using a router. And I didn't want to borrow or even rent one. So I saw one video that showed you how to do it with a chisel. And maybe I'll link that below, but from what I've read online, this sort of style on my door, the one that is on currently now, is quite old. So it's quite rare to have that type. So most of the time the door would have that recess anyway. But yeah, I just bought a chisel off Home Depot for like $10, and that's 10 Canadian, not even US. Came back, made that recess in the hole and installed the lock. It was so simple. And then after that, installing the actual lock is really simple. You just put in the front, put in the back, connect the wires, and you're basically done. I was actually pretty shocked at how simple it was. If it was not for that reset, and if that recess on the door was already there, it would have taken me about 10 minutes. Now, talking about the build quality, now I replaced this lock with my old lock in this apartment, which is from a company called Visor. So that one is full metal, costs a lot of money, by the way. And it was solid metal, pretty heavy. So quality-wise, never had an issue with that. This DESLOC one does have some plastic components, so it does feel a bit lighter, but having said that, it didn't strike me as of a lesser quality by any stretch of the imagination. And once you actually install it on your door, it really felt really stable and steady. So again, no complaints on the build quality. And when I said there were some plastic components, I'm referring to the latch and all that and the housing. The actual deadbolt, it is your same full solid metal, so don't worry about that. Now, talking about features, and there's going to be a ton of features. First, about the physical part of the smart lock, you do get a keypad, which is really nice. They're not physical buttons. It's more of a screen where you tap and more of a touchscreen number pad. Now, you also get a screen which DESLOC calls Lock View. So it's their own proprietary screen. And again, there are quite a few uses for that. We'll talk about that later on. Now, one thing I really like, and that was always a requirement for me if I were to ever install a smart lock, is that it needed to come with its own physical key cylinder and key. Now, if you're wondering, like, don't all of them do that? Actually, no. There are some smart locks out there, even from the big brands, that don't come with a physical key and key cylinder. Now, that for me is a must because you need to have that backup plan in case all else fails. Whether, you know, if it suddenly dies or you run out of battery or something like that. Now, talking about running out of battery, DESLOC even has a sort of a fail-safe for that when we talk about that in a bit. But for me, no matter how many features they have, I still want a key cylinder and the key. And the D110 Plus does have it. So DESLOC, well done. So yeah, going back to that screen, I actually love that screen so much. And there are so many smart locks out there that cost maybe even twice as much that don't have screens. And I think for the ones that I've seen, most of them actually don't. This is the first time I've seen one with a screen. Now, that screen is really versatile. It tells you whether it's locked or not. It gives you a lot of statuses. It gives you your battery life indicator as well. So you get a constant reminder of what is your battery life, so you're not in for a shock and one day it just stops working. And speaking of battery life, so it does need 4 AA batteries. It is not included in the box, which is not a deal breaker for me. I would rather get good batteries that would last as long. Now, DESLOC actually claims a battery life of 6 months on like everyday fair use. Obviously, I haven't been able to test that right now, but they have a technology called PowerMax. And if you enable that PowerMax technology, it's supposed to go all the way to a year. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there is a fail-safe in case the battery dies. Now, one obviously is the actual key that you can use to lock and unlock your door. But not just that, and I actually love this. So on the front side of the door, at the bottom, there is a USB-C port. So you can actually plug in a power bank that you can use to power up the lock, enter your PIN or fingerprint or whatever, and you're in. So that's fantastic. Now, actually, one thing I forgot to mention about build quality, and it's not just about the physical materials that they use, but this also has BHAMA 3 certification, I believe. Now, what this means is it actually meets residential requirements for security. So even though this may not be a brand that you're fully aware of, they do meet the residential security requirement. Now, it also has IP54 dust resistance as well, water and dust resistance, so you are assured there. So obviously, yes, the front part of your lock is going to be facing the elements, rain, dust and all that, but it does have that rating, so you're good there as well. Now, I'm also going to list here all the temperatures that it still works at, what's its hottest temperature, lowest temperature. Now, that's great, I think, for almost everywhere else in the world. But if you look at the lowest temperature, here in Calgary and certain parts of Canada, it can actually get colder than that. Now, we are in the middle of summer, so it'll be a few months before I can test it. And actually, now that I think about it, I won't be able to test how cold it can run at because I live in an apartment. So my door is indoors. So only when I move to a home or something, then it might be an issue. But again, in Calgary and certain parts of Canada, it does get colder than that. It never gets hotter than that, but you know, it does get colder, so I'm not sure how that will work. So be very aware in where you are living, what is the coldest temperature on average and hottest temperature on average. Now, it is a smart lock, like I mentioned, so it will require Wi-Fi access if you want to use the app that is included. Now, this is what I really like. Now, you can actually run this with an app or as a standalone. So you do get that option as well. Now, you might be wondering, if I buy a smart lock, why on earth would I not want the app? And yes, for most people, I would agree. For me, I'm using the app and I love it. But for a lot of people, they want that security as well. They don't want their lock connected to the cloud. They don't want it available on an app. They want the features of fingerprint sensors and pins and all that, but they don't want that connectivity to the cloud, and that's fine. And the DESLOC D110 Plus gives you that option. You can actually set up your lock solely on the lock itself. And that's another good reason that you have that screen. So But if you're like me and I'm happy to have that Wi-Fi connection, I use the app and I absolutely love it. We'll talk about that in a bit. But one thing you will need to know, just make sure that where your front door is or wherever you're installing that smart lock, make sure that you have Wi-Fi range. And yes, like I mentioned, you do have a fingerprint sensor on the lock, which you can use. Now, DESLOC claims that it's one of the fastest out there at 0.3 seconds to unlock the door. Now, obviously, I've been using it for a few weeks. It does not feel like 0.3 seconds. But when I think about it, I think what they're saying is that it takes 0.3 seconds for it to sort of sense your fingerprint and recognize your fingerprint and then start the unlocking process. The actual unlocking probably takes another split second or so. So the entire process, I would say, maybe a second, to scan your fingerprint, it will unlock the door for you and then you open the door. But the actual recognition of the fingerprint was really fast. And yeah, I can sort of believe the 0.3 seconds. Now, speaking of fingerprints, now DESLOC claims that you can add up to 50 fingerprints, which is great. So you can have fingerprints added in for your entire family. And in the app, you can create separate profiles by name. So you can have a profile for every single member of the family. And then you can add fingerprints for them. You can add as many as you want per family member, as long as the total doesn't go more than 50. And that's also great because if you have the app, every time someone locks and unlocks the door, you get a notification. And it also tells you in that notification who locked or unlocked the door. Now, obviously, that's something that you can enable or disable from the app, but at least you have that option. Now, going back to the app, the actual process of setting up the lock on the app, again, very, very simple. I just went to the lock, added it. I scanned the QR code just to get it in, but yeah, it was added to my app within 5 minutes or less. Now, this is what I absolutely love. And one of the strongest points about this lock is that you have about six different ways to control your lock to either lock or unlock it. So one, like I've been talking about a lot, you can use a fingerprint, and I've added all 10 of my fingerprints just because I can, and it's only me and my wife living here. You also can add a PIN number. You can add a permanent PIN number and associate that with your profile or a person. I can even create a one-time PIN or a temporary PIN for someone who's coming to visit, or if I'm away and I need someone to come in and grab something from the house or look after something in the house, I can create that one-time PIN that after that they use and they leave, that PIN is no longer valid, and that is fantastic. I can lock and manually unlock from the app as well. Just slide to lock and unlock. That's easy and pretty responsive, actually. I thought it would take longer for that information to be sent, but it was pretty quick. Now, in the box, you will also get 2 blue cards with the logo DESLOC. Now, these are what we can call it ID card or an IC card. Basically, it is a card that you can tap on the lock to use that to go in, and that's really cool. And lastly, you have your physical key that you can use. So fingerprint, you've got PIN, a permanent PIN, you've got a temporary PIN. You can also use the card, you can use the key, and if the batteries die, you can even plug in a power bank to power up the lock to unlock it there as well. So there are a ton of ways. It is almost foolproof. I have to say, there's a lot of thought and design that went into this. So well done, DESLOC. Now, talking about some of the other features of the lock that is available on the app. Now, when you lock or unlock rather, when you unlock the door and you go in, it does have an auto lock feature that is enabled by default. And by default, it is set at about 5 seconds. So what this means is if you go to your door, unlock it by however you want to unlock it, you close the door, within 5 seconds, it locks the door immediately. Now, that is great, and you can adjust. So it goes all the way from 5 seconds to 120 seconds, essentially 2 minutes, before it locks again. Now, it is a cool feature, and if you like that, great. To be honest, for me, I've disabled it. And not that I don't think it's secure or anything like that. It's more about me and how I work. Now, for me, I don't like the idea of being complacent about something. So for example, let's say here, I get used to the fact that, oh, it's going to lock by itself. So I just close the door and I go about my day. One day, if it doesn't do it, or if I go on Airbnb, for example, that doesn't have that feature, I just go in and sort of muscle memory and I'm used to it. I just leave it thinking it's going to lock by itself, and I've essentially got an unlocked house the whole time. So yeah, for me, I've disabled it. I'm not really a fan of that particular feature, not because it's a bad feature, but it's more about me and my own habits. And it even has an anti-hijacking system or anti-peeping system. It is so secure. And honestly, these features I've never even heard of in some of the other more expensive locks. So it's really good, and they've done everything in their power to give you all the sort of features, and you can customize them however you want to your own benefit. Now remember, all of these features are available on the DESLOC D110 Plus, and it's less than $100, which is insane when you consider some of the more reputable brands going up to 150, like Yale and all that, even 200 and above. In fact, I like the DESLOC D110 Plus so much that I am going to give it a full 5 out of 5 stars, and of course, our Technobabble recommended logo. It is really a no-brainer, and honestly, if you're looking for a smart lock with all of these features, the DESLOC D110 Plus has to be right up there with some of the best recommendations. Alright, so that about wraps up my review of the DESLOC D110 Plus. Now, if you like this video, you know what to do, and I would love it if you would subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications on our next video. I'm JP, and I'll see you real soon.